Aboriginal art is very popular. It's an industry worth millions of dollars. Today we find out about Jeffrey Barden, a white art teacher who worked with Aboriginal people in the early 1970s. A new book about Jeffrey's life records his contribution to Australia's art history. Let's find out more.
There's evidence of painting everywhere at Kintore, an Aboriginal community in the Gibson Desert, more than 500 kilometres west of Alice Springs. Kintore, home to about 450 Pintabee desert people, was established only 20 years ago. And it was only just over 30 years ago that these people began painting on boards and canvas. The Western Desert Art Movement, as it's become known, is a remarkable phenomenon of contemporary art history.
These paintings are collected internationally, quite broadly now, in America and Europe and elsewhere. These paintings really stand up on a world stage against any art. They are truly profound, extremely beautiful at times, and very, very sincere and important paintings, and indeed political in some ways too.
The Western Desert Art Movement owes its beginnings to Jeffrey Barden, an art advisor who was posted to the Central Australian community of Papunya in 1971. Back then, Papunya accommodated around 2,500 Aboriginal people who had been rounded up from the desert. Jeffrey Barden encouraged them to lift depictions of their stories from the desert sand to paint on permanent surfaces. Those early painting days were haphazard.
Well, I would use anything. They even used my shoe polish, white shoe cleaner, when we ran out of white. And painted on floor tiles that were just lying idle where the tilers had left them.
Yet out of that adversity flourished the now famous Papunya Tula School of Painters. Jeffrey Barden put the operation on a fully commercial basis, owned entirely by the artists themselves. Most of the Aboriginal families who were forced into Papunya have now retreated to desert communities like Kintore. Papunya Tula these days has 150 artists on its books, their work now worth many millions of dollars and appreciated around the world.
During the 80s, some of the institutions started to appreciate what was occurring in the middle of Australia, one of the most extraordinary art movements of the 20th century.
Painting has become not only a way of life for these people, but now a means of sustaining lives blighted by diabetes and heart and kidney diseases. The people in Kintore have opened a dialysis unit, paid for by the proceeds of an auction of some of their paintings in Sydney 4 years ago.
We had an enormous dinner at the Ark Grove, New South Wales, where people came and paid $150 per head to attend the function, and we auctioned the paintings. Now, our intention was to raise $400,000, and we raised $1.1 million.
Till now, 16 citizens of Kintore with acute kidney failure have been cooped up far away in Alice Springs for dialysis treatment. The auction of paintings means kidney patients from the Western Desert will now be able to have occasional treatment and respite at home, a tangible benefit of the legacy of Jeffrey Barden. His time at Papunya was short, but his legacy will be long.
Jeffrey Barden was involved in the beginning of a new art movement. Here, a movement is a trend, a course that a certain field takes. So an art movement involves a certain style of art, or the people who make a certain type of art. The art movement in today's story is the Western Desert Art Movement. How did this movement start?
Jeffrey Barden encouraged them to lift depictions of their stories from the desert sand to paint on permanent surfaces.
The Aboriginal people of the Western Desert area used to do all their storytelling and designs in the desert sand. But Jeffrey Barden encouraged them to lift depictions or representations of their stories from the desert sand. He encouraged Aboriginal people to paint and draw on permanent surfaces. If something is permanent, it lasts for a long time or forever. A permanent surface is a place that will last for a long time. Painting on permanent surfaces meant that people could see these depictions rather than them just being blown away by the wind.
Those early painting days were haphazard.
Those early painting days were haphazard. If something is haphazard, it's random. It means not having any order. The early painting days didn't have any order. They weren't organised at all. The term days refers to a period of time or activity. You might hear phrases like these days or those were the days. These days means at the current time, and those were the days is used to mean that life was better in the time that you're talking about. Here, the reporter's saying that when the Western Desert movement first started, things weren't planned and were left to chance. Listen.
They even used my shoe polish, white shoe cleaner, when we ran out of white. And painted on floor tiles that were just lying idle where the tilers had left them.
The painters would use shoe polish when they ran out of paint, if they had no paint left, and they'd paint on floor tiles if they didn't have any canvas. But things quickly began to change.
During the 80s, some of the institutions started to appreciate what was occurring in the middle of Australia, one of the most extraordinary art movements of the 20th century.
During the 80s, institutions started to appreciate what was occurring. An institution is a large, important organisation. An art gallery or a university might be called an institution. To appreciate means to recognise or start to see that something is important. Some institutions started to see that what was occurring or happening was one of the most extraordinary art movements of the 20th century. Extraordinary means unusual and special. It was the beginning of one of the most unusual but special art movements of the 20th century. And how important is the art these days?
Painting has become not only a way of life for these people, but now a means of sustaining lives blighted by diabetes and heart and kidney diseases.
Painting has become not only a way of life. The term way of life describes the way a person or group of people act and live. Painting has always been important. It's a way of life for many Aboriginal people at Kintore. But now it's more than that as well. Painting is a means or way of sustaining lives blighted by diabetes and heart and kidney disease. To sustain means to keep alive, and blighted means spoiled. Painting is a way of helping keep people alive who are sick with many life-threatening illnesses in the community. The people in the desert community Kintore have held an auction to sell some of their paintings, and the money raised has been used to help treat people with kidney disease.
The auction of paintings means kidney patients from the Western Desert will now be able to have occasional treatment and respite at home, a tangible benefit of the legacy of Geoffrey Barden. His time at Papunya was short, but his legacy will be long.
From the money raised through selling the art, kidney patients will be able to have treatment at home instead of having to travel to a hospital in town. This is a tangible or real benefit of the legacy of Geoffrey Barden. A legacy is something left behind, often a gift that people leave when they die. Geoffrey Barden has left something behind him in Papunya that has very real and long-term benefits for the people there. And he also helped to start one of the most important art movements of recent times.